Hi everyone, this is Rune, or Rune for Norwegian listeners. You know me from the Prog Files, and of course as a writer on the Progspace, and you are listening to the Progcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Progcast. As you already heard, today I'm really happy to have my good friend Rune on the show, and it's episode 64, and we have something very special prepared for you because it is actually today is July the 1st, and that means half of the year 2020 is already over, and a lot has happened in 2020. Globally speaking, a lot of bad stuff, of course, but today we want to focus on the music, of course, as we do in the Progcast. And there's been a lot of amazing releases already in 2020, right, Rune?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, starting out thinking in my head, I was like, there aren't that many albums that made a mark on me. But then when I started looking at the list, I was like, wow, I was wrong. There are so many good releases already this year.
Yes, absolutely. As all of you know, in the middle of March, suddenly the all touring stopped and stuff because of the worldwide corona crisis, and that left us with a new way of bringing live music to the homes of the listeners, and it was live streaming that quickly took over for entertainment purposes and for the bands as a tool to stay relevant and connect with their fans. And I wanted to start this episode to give a shout out to some of the live streams I specifically enjoyed. Starting with my Czech friends of End of Scream, which was super cool to have them on the very first weekend of the lockdown, having them perform a show presented by the Progspace on March 14. It was my buddy and producer Randy's birthday, actually. That's why I can remember it so well, the date. That was at that point, I thought we were gonna have a lot of opportunities in the coming weeks of the lockdown. Of course, we didn't know how long it's gonna be, and it's also different for every country. But I thought there's gonna be a lot of opportunity to work with bands and present streams. But then suddenly it exploded, and almost every band did something. So there was so much happening and so fast that it was almost impossible to get ahead of things and plan things because everything was happening so fast. So just a quick shout out to some of my favorite streams apart from End of Scream. And that was that out came a very, very Norway heavy list. With bands like Leprous, Marathon, Matamortem, Green Carnation, and Enslaved. And non-Norwegian bands I really enjoyed the streams of were Oranzi Pazuzu, which I was watching here at the Moonbase with my producer buddies Randy and Kai, and also the Catatonia one. And as for pre-recorded shows, the Tesseract was, of course, amazing. And also the ongoing Kairos lockdown gig series I really, really enjoyed. Any stream that you particularly liked, Rune?
Oh yeah, I'm not the biggest streamy guy, but when you were, I guess I'm missing Norway because being here now in France, there were some things. I watched the Enslaved one, which was really good.
That was at quite at the beginning.
Yeah, that was one of the early bands that did something like that. And then Moron Police had a great stream from the library in
Bergen.
That
was a sweet like a small one, right?
Yeah, very like small one, but it was like
just the singer and the keyboarder.
Exactly, yeah, just guitar and piano or keyboards. Then of course Major Parkinson I enjoyed.
That the moment you mentioned Moran Police, I also remembered that I couldn't watch the Major Parkinson live stream for some reason, and I saved it to watch later, but I never got back to it. So that's something to rectify, because I would assume it's still online, hopefully.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. Probably, I think most of the bands have done that. Made sure people could watch it after in some kind of way. And of course, the last band I have, which is my favorite stream I watched so far, is also related to these bands from Bergen, the Skandalöse Orkester, the Scandalous Orchestra, which had a amazing stream. It's just so. The music is good. The band is incredibly entertaining, and it's unique. So that's probably my favorite so far. The Skandalöse Orkester.
Very cool. I didn't even know they had a stream. I mean, I know the name of the band through you probably, and I also know that they're in this Norwegian pool with
there are
Major Parkinson and
some of the same musicians
Police
that are in Major Parkinson, for instance.
Yeah, that was a nice little kickoff. We're gonna proceed with the albums, of course. Before we get to the albums, we're gonna talk about a couple of EPs, and I was shocked to see that there are no less than 16 EPs on my list that I wanted to give a shout out. There's some of them, the ones I'm going to start with, probably are not going to make the end of the year list. It's going to be the same for the albums of the year. And we just realized that we had a different way of compiling the list. As you, Rune, you put them chronologically because you couldn't make up your mind for a certain order to your liking. I put them in a vague order of liking, but also like far from being anything like written in stone. And
exactly.
More for me is more like blocks of 5 or 6 albums that are like
tiered, tiered for you.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a little bit different for the rating from us. So I'm gonna start with the at the bottom of my list and work my way up to number 1, as you tend to do with those lists. And Rune, you're gonna start at the beginning of the year and work your way towards today, right?
Yeah, that's the plan. That's what I have. I have month by month.
Okay, cool. So you have about 4 or 5 EPs. I have 16 EPs. So I'm gonna just give a shout out to the first about 10 EPs that I found worthy of mentioning, and then we start taking turns in presenting an EP. Starting at the bottom with our friends in Art Against Agony with their electronic music EP Sola Nasce, which I found really cool. Something different for a change. It came out on June 5th, and you can hear more about that in Progcast episode 58. Moving on to Canada, we have one of several guitar centered EPs from Canada from a guy called Gabriel Cyr. He's the guitarist for Universe Effects, the band. And this episode is called Spectrum Exploration 1, and it's out since May 8th. Our good friend Abraham Sarache from Venezuela / the Netherlands brought out an EP called Kaleidoscope of Dreams that is out since January 24th already, and we also had him as guest in Progcast episode 50 if you want to know more about that. My good friend Marcin de Sable put out a little EP called People Came Here on June 14th. And it's something not so proggy, but I still liked it. It's it's a nice little EP. From the UK, there was an EP from the band called Flight of Eden on April 9th. The EP is called Dante's Inferno, and it's what the title suggests. It is about Dante's Inferno, and I thought that was like a nice compact body of work, of this huge epic. I really enjoyed that, and something very new and something I'm very excited about, and I've been listening to a lot in the last days, was the new EP from Between the Buried and Me singer Thomas Gill, called Feel Better. Like really amazing vocal harmonies and stuff. Nothing metal, but yeah, you're kind of expect you should know to expect that from his solo stuff by now. If you have heard his solo stuff before, highly recommended to. If you want to feel better, listen to Feel Better. Something completely different from Canada. Flesh Vessel, Bile of Man Reborn. I already talked about it in a previous podcast, Progcast. The 20-minute, 24-minute song EP, Bile of Man Reborn, that's out since January 24th on Bandcamp only. It's an insane song or composition of avant-garde, extreme prog metal. Definitely. Staying in Canada, from Bird Problem, some more math rocky stuff with Beyond the Nest, the EP that came out on February 17th. A second guitar-centered EP from Dutch guitarist Heik Ersemerci. I already talked about it also on a Progcast earlier, which is out since May 5th. My German friends from the famous German Haken front row with their new band Astramera. I recommended them on the Progcast with Ross from Haken. Their debut EP Into the Wild came out March 27th. From Sweden, Quantum, The Next Breath of Air, came out on June 12th, and it was the second big discovery out of Sweden, the biggest discovery out of Sweden. We're going to talk later about them. And yeah, that almost brings us to the top 5 that I was going to take turns with you, Rune. On number 5, I have another Canadian band that's called Transcend, and about almost 9 or 10 years ago, I think, they had their debut album called The Mind, so that read Transcend the Mind, which was a super cool take on band and album title. And they came back with an EP out of nowhere that's called Balance One, and I really enjoyed that one. Melodic prog metal, but still a distinctive, unique touch, like not too generic. Now, finally, I want to invite you to join the conversation and bring one of your EPs.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Just waiting, sweating here. Yeah. My first EP on my list was from, of course, first I had Abraham's EP, which I really enjoyed. That was in January, right? And then the first one, not on your list, is Ishan or Isan's Telemark EP that was released on February the 14th. Of course, Isan, known from Emperor, Peccatum, all those more, as should say, extreme metal bands, but he's a prog guy through and through, I feel. So that was definitely a favorite so far this year.
Yeah, right. Actually, I have to listen to it. It's kind of, I knew it was coming, and then it was out, and it kind of went went by me, and I missed the opportunity. Like I missed the point in time to listen to it. Good call. Next up, I have from Sweden, Stefan Alzar, The Empty House by the Beach, which is quite poppy, not so much prog, even though it starts with a very distinctive mellotron chord. But I just love these songs on that EP. It's like just such a good mood EP. And the good news is also that Stefan Alzar's main band, Prehistoric Animals, they just released the first single for their upcoming album today. We premiered it on the Progspace like 2 hours ago. So there's and he has actually a second solo EP out in the meantime, and there's gonna be a third. So this guy is keeping busy for sure.
Yeah, I agree. He's on my list as well. Like you said, it's just such a positive energy through all the music he writes or is involved in, and definitely a highlight of the EP releases. So
yeah.
But for me, the next one on my list is a band from the UK, from Manchester, called Kunum. They released re-released an EP called Prelusion, remixed and remastered on March 10th. And this band is it's just 2 tracks, but it still clocks in at 25 minutes, so it's very much a progressive thing. If I were to describe them, I would say prog metal meets like 80s Marillion style neo-prog or something. It's kind of an interesting band, and it has for people who are deep into into obscurity of prog, they have the guitarist of Spires, the UK band, in the band. So it's quite a interesting and good EP, and a nice taste, I would say, because I believe they are working on an album now.
Very interesting. I haven't heard about the project, and I'm very much looking forward to listening to your playlist, Rune. Then that's a good opportunity to also highlight our playlist, because I'm gonna do as we did for our end of the year wrap up last year. I'm gonna do 2 separate playlists with my favorites and with your favorites, Rune, so everybody can check them out. And I'm super curious about the stuff you're bringing here that I haven't heard about yet. And of course, they always with a disclaimer that we might have missed something, and now we're kind of looking at each other's list and maybe showing the other something that the other missed. But also, of course, you our listeners, we encourage you to write us, comment. What were your favorite albums so far in 2020? Your favorite releases, regardless if it was an album, an EP, or even a single only. Do you agree with our picks, or did we miss something entirely? Just let us know in the comments on Facebook or Instagram or wherever. The last 3 EPs I'm going to mention are from France.
I sort of suspected that might be the case,
but yeah, my number 3 you probably didn't suspect, because it's a project called Paper Boys, and the EP is called Not. It was released on Bandcamp only, I think, on May 20. And it's very chill, piano-driven, atmospheric music. And there's also a little bit of drums, also played by Marcin de Sable from Archetype and Natural Disorder and Gemini and so many other projects, and also his own solo EP I mentioned earlier. But it's so just beautiful, relaxing stuff.
Sounds interesting. That's new to me, and I'm noting it down as we speak.
Nice. I have two left, and everyone who knows me should know which EPs that are. Do you still have EPs on your list, Rune?
Yeah, I have. Well, of course, I have the same Swedes in Quantum like you had, so I'll just mention that they were on my list as well.
Yeah.
But my final, I think this is my final EP actually on my list, and that's this American band. I think they're from California, called Celestial Ember, which released their EP Abscission in April, the 18th of April. And this is something that I really obsessed over. It's like 3 parts of a bigger whole there, called like Abscission 1, 2, and 3, and it's just an amazing EP with the style is like contemporary modern prog with saxophone, both clean and guttural vocals. Just a very interesting band, and they released their first EP, I believe, back in 2018, and going back and listening to that now, it's clear that they made like leaps and bounds forward with their music. So it's really a good EP.
Thank you for that, Rune, because that reminds me that they were on my list, and I kind of kept my list in the form of a collage on the website Topsters 2, and it kind of disappeared, and then I forgot what it was, and I had a blank space there, and I filled it with something else, and now I remember again to put it on there again to see if it will stand the test of time until the end of the year. So I'm super happy that you didn't forget about them. I also mentioned them after you recommended them to me. I mentioned them in one of the What's in Your Walkman sections. Really cool EP, and yeah, they just they got lost over the course of the last weeks in my list.
Yeah, it happens with so much good music coming out. That's yeah, it happens.
Yeah, my last 2 EPs, I don't want to waste too much time on them because everybody should know by now that Blue Wave Quartet's Pony Club and Lucas De La Rosa Sunlight Highlights. That would no 2020 best of list of my personal taste would be complete without them. And just amazing stuff and ridiculously talented, all of these young musicians. And of course, you can go back to the Progcast episode 53 if you want to listen to a little bit more about what Lucas De La Rosa has been up to and what else is coming from this direction. So yeah, that was our EP section. Now for the big albums.
Yes, now for the big stuff. Already quite a bit of good stuff there in EPs, but let's move on to the full length albums now.
Yeah, I have 25 albums. I want to start with a little honorable mention there, though, because we just had them on the Progcast last week. As we speak last week, when this episode will be coming out, it's going to be 2 weeks already. Long Distance Calling, their new album is excellent, but it takes more time for me to see if Long Distance Calling have finally managed to stay in my mind and heart with this release, which they haven't so far. But at least the album, I know I can appreciate and also already say that it's a really good album. I just don't know if it hits me personally that well, that deep, that it's gonna stay. And but the artwork is so fantastic. The artwork is mind blowing. One of my favorite artworks of this year already. And yeah, as I said, Progcast episode 62. bass player Jan Hoffmann of German instrumental band Long Distance Calling. That was my number 26 or honorable mention. What would be your first mention?
Oh
Be it
yeah,
honorable or regular.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with my regular ones to say, or nothing regular about it because they're amazing albums. And since I'm starting in January, it's Mobius from France with their Kala album, which was released just at the end of January. And have to say that this band, even though I enjoyed their debut album, this is very much leaps and bounds forwards for their musical expression, their oriental mix of world music and prog. It's just and gents. It's just a lot happening in their music, and I really, really appreciate it. Just a very good band.
Absolutely. I listened to it yesterday again, and it is also on my list, somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it. I think I'm gonna take the first couple of albums together because they're like extremely special albums, and because the bands were like legendary bands before, and they made kind of a comeback.
Mm-hmm.
And that is Eric Clayton from Savior Machine, Conception, Psychotic Waltz, and Mekong Delta. Mm-hmm. Now, Mekong Delta has been around. They didn't have they didn't break up. They have been around all this time, but they are legends. They've been around since 1986, I believe. They're as old as I am.
85 or 86. It's just a very, very old band in this genre.
Yeah, probably the first German prog metal band. So Mekong Delta, new album, Tales of Future Past, out since May 8th, I think. A very, very solid album. I really enjoyed the mix of prog metal, vocal-driven tracks with Martin Lamar's powerful voice and instrumental orchestral interludes. That's kind of their strength. Psychotic Waltz and Conception are, of course, the big comebacks, more or less, from legendary 90s prog metal bands. And even though they're very different, the albums, Psychotic Waltz album, The God-Shaped Void, kind of combined for me the Devon Graves' years in Dead Soul Tribe with the more compact and groovy side of Psychotic Waltz, of kind of later 90s Psychotic Waltz into the Everflow and so on. It was clear that they never gonna get back into the social grace
no,
craziness.
I think that's yeah.
But there's some magical moments on there, definitely. Conception took quite some stuff on the Conception record was surprising, and some stuff felt also a little bit played safe. So it was kind of a mix, but I enjoy both albums, definitely. Now the biggest one, the one that was not to be expected, at least it was, and it doesn't have like this big of a marketing and advertising. It's not really seen in the scene. I think not many know that Eric Clayton of Savior Machine has a new album out, and I think it's also because of the fact it's only on Bandcamp and you can order it on his website. He has a new band from the Netherlands, and the album is called 1,000 Scars. It's very long, and I don't know yet. I haven't listened to it enough to have like a final verdict if it really if it can like keep up the quality over the whole length. But also there I found a lot of classic deep Eric Clayton vocal moments in there, and that's what I was looking for, and that was what I was missing since Savior Machine is not really doing anything anymore. And it's also a little bit it's a lot stripped down compared to the huge epic orchestral bombast from the Legend trilogy Savior Machine did last. So his voice has more place to shine, also more space. Have you listened to it?
No, I wanted to say those out of those albums you mentioned now, 3 of them are on my list, but I weren't really aware even of the Clayton album. So that's something that I'm gonna have to look into. But yeah, I had Conception, I had the Psychotic Waltz, and I had the Mekong Delta. And I have to say, my thoughts on those albums mirror yours more or less to the point, because they are all good albums, but for all of them, there's like something stopping them from being totally golden,
Yeah.
Great music, but, for all bands like that, it's going to be very tough to try and sort of match the things that's set in people's minds as the classic albums. Yeah.
Yeah. They have maybe like a double disadvantage, as they have to go against their own huge high set bars that they set themselves with their legendary albums.
Exactly,
before.
They're competing with themselves here.
Yeah, and also with the innovativeness of the young generation on top of that. But anyway, good albums, and like
absolutely.
I'm happy that they, especially in the I was waiting for new Psychotic Waltz and Conception stuff for 20 years since I discovered the bands, and I discovered the bands probably 5 years after they disbanded in 1997. So I'm super happy to have new music from them, even though it might be missing a notch.
I agree. Since for me, I of course was a fan of both Psychotic Waltz and Conception back when they were around, and to be honest, I'm very happy to see Khan back in Conception and singing for a good band again. I'm just gonna say that. That's my personal opinion, but yeah. So, but also, we've had some Östby, the guitarist. He made Ark. We wouldn't have that if Conception didn't have this break. So the goods and the bads. But this new album is great.
It's very interesting stuff. That like the first song after the intro is like a whole new side of Khan, like totally frantic, shouting, and it's almost intimidating.
I agree.
This revolutionary fighting spirit.
Very, very interesting stuff. And like you said, it's cool to see something different from them, not just going back into the old formula, but doing new stuff. So next up on my list, if we're going to go there, would be on February 24th, an American band called Pyramid released their second album called Amnesty. And this band is, I would say, they're progressive metal mixed with some form of almost like technical thrash. So if you like the classic progressive metal, but you also like stuff like early Sieges Even or Watchtower or whatever, then this band should be right up your alley. And they released their first album last year. It's called Gold Tooth. And this new album came this year. And very much worth mentioning. A very good band.
Did you play them on the Prog Files recently?
Yes, I did play them on the last show, I believe. I played a couple of tracks of theirs from this new album now, Amnesty. Very, very good.
Yeah, it was two days ago only, right?
No, the one before that.
The one before that.
So the May edition of the Prog Files had Pyramid in it. which you could always go back and listen to the listen to the podcasts of that is up after the shows.
Yeah. The Prog Files, for anyone who don't know, is a monthly radio show Rune hosts over at ISKC.rocks radio, and you can find it on Facebook. They now have a Facebook page called Prog Files, and of course, as Rune is part of the Progspace team, we are also presenting the show. So you can also find it on on our Progspace Facebook page. We are always pushing the monthly episodes, and there's a lot of obscure stuff to be discovered. Always,
that's the main goal of it, to have some stuff you may not have heard before.
There's always something I've never heard before. Like probably half. It's 2 hours long, right? And
it's 2 hours at the last Monday of every month, and I pride myself in trying to play some obscure stuff, but also new and up and coming bands that deserve some more space in this world. And when I manage to outprog you, it's always a good day. So I'm glad to hear that you discover new stuff on there regularly.
Yeah, honestly, it's most of the time it's at least half of the bands, or half of the 2 hours or so 1 hour is completely new to me. So I'm really happy always to be able to discover new stuff there. Not so obscure, my next entry from Finland, cello metal Apocalyptica. Their album Cell Zero came out on January 10th, and as you might remember, we also had an interview with their drummer Mikko Siren on episode 34, and it's been a while since I listened to the album, but I remember very clearly listening to it a lot when it came out, and just being so happy that Apocalyptica was like back from being the mainstream, having all those guest singers doing pop songs and doing like really innovative proggy stuff, and it's at times it feels proggier than their proggiest album to date, which was Reflections back in 2002. And so yeah, it was just so great to see them doing prog music again. And yeah, moving away from the mainstream pop formulas, songwriting wise.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised you had them on your list. I know you're a cello guy yourself, so that didn't surprise me very much, to be honest. You want me to go with my next?
Yes, please.
Yeah, February 28th. That's a band from Los Angeles called Intronaut. They released an album called Fluid Existential Inversions. I'm trying to keep it straight here. That's not an easy name. Yeah,
I love the name.
Amazing band with a great album. Perhaps it's hard to say because they have released so many good albums. I think this is their 6th full-length album, but maybe my favorite from them is this new one. And yeah, it's just a mad mix of like stoner rock, jazz, heavy metal, of course a lot of progressive influences. Anyone who's into someone like Mastodon might probably enjoy this. Yeah, definitely. Very, very good album.
Yeah, I appreciate them. They're not on my list, but I remember seeing them live a couple of years ago with the Norwegian Shining on like double headliner tour. I was blown away by their live show. It was amazing. And our friends of Freaks TV were there shooting a documentary. You can check them out on YouTube still. Let's see where we are. Next up, from France, we have a band called Stumb or however you want to pronounce them. A very long album. I also listened to it again yesterday to check if it's worth putting on the list. from Nihil was also released at the very end of January, and it's excellently produced. It's groovy, modern, genty, atmospheric, also with a little bit of electronic glitches going on in the background. I think it's 70 minutes long. It might be 20 minutes too long in the end, but it's still a great album, I think. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very good album. I'm almost ashamed now to say that they're not on my list, but that's not because I didn't enjoy it, but because I forgot to put it on there. So thanks for reminding me of that, Dario. But what I did remember to put on my list is the Golden Caves album, Dysergy, that was released on March the 14th. Just a very, very pleasant listen. You know, the voice, the instrumental parts, everything. I don't know what we can call this type of prog really, but I would have to say it's more accessible, less technical, but still it's clear that it's progressive music because of the structure of the songs and just the sheer instrumental prowess of the people performing. Just so Dutch band there, Golden Caves, very good.
I enjoyed their previous album better somehow, but still good stuff. Not on my list though. Next up, the second cello album this year, but this one is not cello metal. It's just music and some of the most ethereal music of this year to date. It's from Raphael Weinroth Brown, Worlds Within. It also came out in January, and we had an interview with him on episode 26 from last year when he was here in Munich with Leprous. And yeah, just amazing atmospheric cello-only compositions.
Yeah, this guy is always involved in interesting stuff, isn't he?
Absolutely. A new Camancello album also coming soon. With his another project of his. So yeah, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, for me, next up is something a bit more extreme. I have, I want to say a Norwegian band, but that's not really true. Azusa, with their Loop of Yesteryears, which came out on April 10th. You know, reason I want to say Norwegian is because, of course, Christer Espevold and David Husvik from Extol is in there. But also you have Liam Wilson from the Dillinger Escape Plan on bass, and you have Eleni Safiradu, I think is her name, from CNR as the vocalists. And this band they just do everything. It's like it's extreme. I think they describe themselves as avant trash or something, which is a cool description. But yeah, it's just a very energetic, very aggressive, yet still melodic album. Just a definite favorite of mine so far.
I knew that was gonna end up on your list. I have also something more extreme next up, and that is the band Eternum from the United States with their album Al-Qassam. And it's kind of a death metal version of Orphaned Land, and Kobe Fari also does some guest vocals, and it's just a cool record. I also listened to it again recently, and I really enjoyed it. So definitely enjoyable for people who miss the death metal in Orphaned Land.
Exactly. If you're into those early Orphan Land albums, then this is something that is worth looking into, I would say.
Yeah.
So, what's for me then? Next up, going to the UK, Pure Reason Revolution.
That is my next. That is my next as well.
Yeah. their first album since they came back together in 2018. Of course, they played Midsummer Prog in 2019, and now they're back with a new album, which I have to say it's a really good album. It's back to form, even though it's not like a carbon copy of any of their earlier efforts.
Not at all.
Really, really a good album, which I have enjoyed and listened to a lot. So they deserve a place on my list, and yours as well. I can tell. Yeah.
Very enjoyable album, very enjoyable, and we had guitarist and main man John Courtney on the Progcast in episode 49. And I enjoyed that very, very much, and it was kind of they're kind of on the alternative outskirts of what I can like take for like alternative influences in my music. I'm not the biggest fan of alternative stuff, but that is like just out there. If they went even more in the alternative direction, I would not like it as much anymore, probably. But that's just personal taste. And the next album on my list after that is also from Inside Out Music, and that's the Pattern Seeking Animals album, the second one from them, Prehensile Tales. And we also had Mastermind John Beckhold on the Progcast in episode 55. And it's just good music. It doesn't feel overly proggy to me, and it's not necessarily doesn't have to be prog rock. It feels for me like, even though there's like a long 20-minute song on it or whatnot, and another 7 or 8 or 9 or 10-minute songs or whatever, but it feels for me they draw a lot of influences from back when that's gonna sound terribly boomerish, but it feels like there's is music that like derives influences from a time when pop music was still made with real instruments.
Okay, boomer.
Now, a really enjoyable album, but still, we're still in that part of my list. As I said at the beginning, I try to rate them a little bit, and I'm going from the bottom up. So it's still in the we're still in the
like the mid section, or
we're at place 16 out of 25, and that still means I'm expecting those albums that I mentioned until now not to pop up in my end of the year list. If the year continues to bring out that many good albums, and I'm expecting it.
Exactly, and so to jump back to my way of doing it, I'm going month by month. I'm up to May 15th here as a French band from Avignon called Ekphrasis, which I discovered just recently. Their album called Weird Interbreeding, which is it's a weird interbreeding of fusion, jazz, progressive metal. It sounds contemporary, but still it's not like a copy of other bands out there that are doing well at the moment. So I have to say that this is for being a debut album, it's really, really impressive from these French guys. And I can see them doing interesting things in the future. So Ekphrasis there, Weird Interbreeding. Have a listen, folks.
Yes, you played that one on the Prog Files 2 days ago, and I remember being blown away, and I definitely have to check out the album. I knew it's been sitting in our promo inbox for a while, so that's one I'm gonna listen to for sure. Next up would have been Mobius, but we already had that. So for me, it's another one I'm sure you have on your list as well, and that's Reinås from the UK with their Reflections Upon Darkness progressive death metal masterpiece.
Yeah, I have it as well, yeah.
That was released in May 25, and I've only listened to it once, but the quality was so outstanding already for me that I couldn't couldn't do anything else. I just put it right away on the list.
Yeah, I have to say that when it comes to this brand of progressive music, which I would say is like atmospheric progressive death metal, this is probably the best album I've heard in this style since the last Spires album, which I'm a big fan of. So yeah, I'm blown away. Reflections Upon Darkness, really, really good album from Rannoch. Yeah, so up next then for me, I have an American band called Binary Code. They released their album Memento Mori on May 15th. Atmospheric, progressive, post-metal. I believe they toured with Leprous in US and Canada, which I can understand because I could see people who enjoy Leprous enjoying this band as well.
That's where I know the name from, but I had never listened to them. Yeah, but I remember the name, seeing it on the bill.
It's quite catchy yet brutal at times. Yeah, good band, good album. Memento Mori.
Back to France, some weird stuff, but not as weird as earlier in his career. Igor, Spirituality and Distortion, that is out since March 27 on Metal Buried Records, and I enjoyed a lot more than his earlier stuff because that was just too much for me. To be frank and honest.
Yeah, it's on my list as well. I'm the opposite of you. I probably enjoyed his earlier albums more than this, but still, I enjoyed this new album very much, and especially I was very happy to see George Fisher from Cannibal Corpse make a guest appearance, which was an amazing track there with him.
See, I like the sudden Baroque interludes most, but that's because I grew up with classical and Baroque and Renaissance music and all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's my background.
But absolutely a fine album from Igor.
Yeah.
Let's see here then. I had several albums for May 8th. Mekong Delta, you mentioned. One of the other ones was Green Carnation, Leaves of Yesteryear, which, of course, is somewhat of a return for that Norwegian band. They are... go ahead. Yeah.
They are on my list as well. They would have come up in a couple of places. And I could have paired them with the bands I mentioned at the beginning of this section. But I felt it was just a little bit more fresh and convincing. Like that is the one out of these 5, or was it 6, of the older bands, of the veterans, that convinced me the most somehow, or that I feel that will stay with me the longest in the future.
I agree with that also because I feel that Green Carnation is a band that's very good at like reinventing themselves regularly.
Yeah.
Adding new stuff and coming at their music from sort of different, with a different outlook on it. So for me as well, I set this album a little bit above those albums we mentioned initially, and it's just a really, really good return for them.
Absolutely, and we had a really cool chat with Kjetil Northus, the singer, in episode 54. If you want to go back and listen to that, and we also talked with him about the best of, what was it, April maybe back then? Yeah, that was a really fun episode. I really enjoyed talking to Kjetil, really nice guy, and I love his voice. Next up, for me also, coincidentally, a May 8th release. I'm at number 12 on my list, and that was The Hirsch Effect with Collapse. Crazy album, crazy guys, 3 guys that are really, really, really weird and just such a unique style. And I'm looking forward to exploring this album a lot more because it's so intricate and there's so much stuff to discover. Also with the German lyrics, of course, I definitely have an advantage of like understanding them. But it's I'm still new to the Hirsch effect sound universe, I would say. So I'm still starting to wrap my head a bit around that. But they're definitely amazing and they are unique. And as I had them, I had the pleasure of interviewing them in episode 27. We released it as in episode 27, and the interview was at the Euroblast Festival. And when I told them, yeah, you guys are unique, they were like, you mean unique as in shitty?
No.
And I definitely can negate that and say no. They're definitely unique in the best possible sense, and they also have a new EP coming up called Gregare, and they have a crowdfunding running with that, where they have will rework some of the songs with an orchestra and that kind of stuff. So definitely go check that out.
Yeah, that album was on my list as well. Like you say, incredibly dense and an album that demands a lot of listening. So I still have quite a few rounds, I think, to put in with the Collapse to get it completely under my skin. But yeah, amazing stuff. And I'm gonna stay on May 8th because I have another album released there, which is Swedish Vulkan's Technotura.
I was expecting that, and that is a lot more way up in my list as well. And that was actually, I just want to kind of complete the circle here, as I was saying in the EP section when I mentioned Quantum. Quantum was the second Swedish discovery of this year. Vulkan, of course, is the big one. And for you guys listening to it, when this episode is gonna drop in 1 week from now, you already have the episode with drummer Johan Norbeck, episode 63, out. That is coming tomorrow on July 2nd. So please enlighten us with your thoughts on Vulkan.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to hearing what Johan has to say on your podcast. But yeah, this album is really blew me away. Of course, I was aware of Vulkan because they've been around since like 2006 or something, and this is their third album. And I've listened to it before, and enjoyed it, but it's never really like hit me like this album did, which is, I would say, is akin to a knockout. Just amazing songwriting, a very pleasant listening experience. The mix of English and Swedish lyrics adding another layer to it. Yeah. Amazing album, and probably if I were to rate like you, I probably would have this towards the top of my favorites so far this year.
It's on the fourth place for me. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and put on my place 11 Martin Gresch, Hush Mortal Core. We talked about it a bit at some point in the Progcast already. This guy did a collaboration with Tesseract back on the Polaris album with the song Hexes. An amazingly unique songwriter again, and the album starts quite art popish, but the guys from Tesseract also have played some guest instruments. And you can definitely hear that instrument, that influence, but it's not as overproduced, almost to the point of being sterile as Tesseract. There's a lot, and it borders a little bit on the avant-garde at some points. It's a very, very interesting listen, and I'm looking forward to spending more time with this album, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. Interesting stuff. So is the next band on my list, I think, from May the 29th. It's another Norwegian band called Shaman Elephant. They had an album out called Wide Awake But Still Asleep. It's one of those many high quality releases from Apollon Records, which is becoming, I will have to say, that's a quality stamp in itself, just to have them release your stuff, because
like the artisan era for tech death.
Exactly. It's just like everything that comes from there is worth listening to in some way or another. Shaman Elephant been around for a bit. I believe they released their debut album Crystals in 2016. Now there's a new album out, which is, in my opinion, even better. Now we're moving into that kind of 60s, 70s psychedelic stuff, but they still manage to sound modern. I think Motorpsycho, for people who know them, is a band that you could relate them to. Also Swedish Dungen. Yeah, just very groovy, nice 70s inspired progressive rock. Very good.
Nice. We're entering the top 10 for me, and we are also nearing the 1 hour mark, or we already passed it, so we're trying to keep it as short and precise for you guys, so you don't get bored. On number 10, I have from France, amazing synthwave, proggy synthwave, Folklore X with "This Is Our Planet Now." That was released on April 10th, and I really enjoy this record, the fat synths.
Yeah, next up on my list, from Greece, Jargon with The Fading Thought, released on May the 30th. Vocalist and songwriter from Verbal Delirium with his first, I believe, solo album. It's very hard to categorize the music he does. It's definitely progressive, but its inspirations comes from so many places. You just have to listen to it, I think, to understand it. But yeah, an amazing album.
It's on my place 5. And just go on the Progspace and read my review.
You should, yeah.
And it's a
very good review.
Bandcamp only. Thank you. Bandcamp only release. That speeds up the things here as well, of course, if we have more albums that are matching. Next up for me would be Aussie lads of Ebon Ivory, The Long Dream 1, their debut full-length album that was released on June 5 through Wild Thing Records. And of course, I had Louis Edwards on the Progcast on episode 59. It was also a really nice chat. And yeah, one of their singles, Explosions After Dark, still one of my favorite songs of the year.
Yeah, for me, I'm going back to 70s inspired prog from my hometown of Trondheim, Norway. Arabs in Aspic. They released an album called Madness and Magic on June 12th. Just really good. Perhaps their career highlight for me. I know this time Jostein, the guitarist, singer, main songwriter, got to write lyrics and cooperate with Edgar Broughton, which is like a legendary prog 70s guy from the Edgar Broughton band. And I believe they wrote some lyrics together and stuff, and it shows this album is like full of inspiration. It's full of love for that era. Yeah, amazing album.
Next up for me, I have a guitar instrumental album from a guy called Jason Kui, Hong Kong-based artist. And the album is called Naka, was released February 14th on Prosthetic Records. And it's so diverse and it's so good, like top-notch quality. I just love his inventiveness and like he jumps between genres, between the songs, and has a lot of amazing guest guitarists as well. So if you're going for instrumental guitar solo album, Jason Kui's Naka is the one to go for this year so far.
That's new to me, so you're gonna have to shoot me a link because that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I love it.
Next up, US for me as well. Jupiter Hollow, Bereavement, was out on June 12th. Two young guys just making great contemporary progressive metal and rock. Yeah, I just go listen to it. It's full of positive energy and just an uplifting listening experience. Very good album.
Not so uplifting for me. My next entry would be Catatonia, City Burials. Just like a very, very good, solid Catatonia record, and the best Catatonia guitar solo ever on Untrodden, the last song.
Yeah, that was on my worth mentioning list of a few bands that for me, like you said, it's a good, solid Catatonia album, but for me, they have a little problem with reinvention. They took a break for some years because they didn't exactly know what they were going to do going forward. I was hoping to see maybe a little bit more change from them, but still a very good album.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, for me, the final one I have on my list actually.
Okay. Before you say the final one, I have two more, and then we can say the final one together because I'm 100%
sure.
it's the same one. So
sounds good.
Number 3 and number 2 is Novina's 11th Hour and Caligula's Horses Rise Radiant. We've talked a lot about these albums earlier this year on the Progcast, and we also had Jim Gray and Ross Jennings respectively on the Progcast in episode 51, Ross, and 57, Jim. And now for the big final, just the best album of 2020 so far. Drum roll. For you, it's coincidentally the last one chronologically, I guess.
Yeah, it is.
But I've talked to you a bit, and you, I think you love it as much as I do.
This worked out very well because I would probably put it towards the top of my list as well if I were to rate it the same way as you did. It's of course from the UK.
Kairos, Selects of Dreams.
Selects of Dreams, yeah. Released on June 19th. The second album they do under the Kairos name.
Yes.
I believe they had an earlier album out with Synesthesia or something.
Yes.
Was there? Yeah.
You can learn all about that in episode 60 with Adam Warren.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, I could go on forever about this album, which I actually did in my review on the Progspace, which is way too long. But for anyone who has patience, you could head over there and check that out. But yeah, it's just a really heartfelt tribute to that early 80s sound of prog, yet still managing to sound modern and to grab onto issues that we deal with today. I'm blown away by what they managed to do with Selects of Dreams.
Absolutely, and you mentioned your review now for Selects of Dreams. And earlier we were talking about my review for Yargon's The Fading Thought, where I concluded with that, in these weird times, everybody goes to different things to soothe their minds. You know what I mean? And some people would say, I'm pretty sure that for a lot of people, Yargon's The Fading Thought would be too melancholic and depressive because they want something uplifting in those really crazy times, globally speaking, if we look what's happening in the world. And I said, sometimes I need that melancholy, and because it has a beauty in itself. But even though Selects of Dreams is not a happy album, it's a very uplifting album, and it's as you can see by the title, it has something to do with depression, and it is an album about depression, but I feel, at least for the time you're listening to it, it can cure depression.
Yeah, I agree. You know, it's a kind of a weird combination to call it like melancholic positivity, but that's sort of what I get out of this. It's like a strength that comes from pain, and yeah, it's just very, very interesting, and it doesn't hurt that it's incredibly catchy as well. So
It doesn't hurt
yeah.
at all. On that positive note, even though I have a whole page of expectations still to come listed, I will not bother you guys with that now. I think we should leave it at that on this, as I said, positive note. It's been a pleasure having you with me, Rune. We've talked about so much music. Guys, go listen to the music we talked about on the in the Spotify playlist. I'm gonna compile for you as always. I'm really looking forward to the second half of 2020. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of expected awesomeness coming, but who knows?
Also unexpected, right?
Yeah,
there's
gonna be some more surprises for sure, and I hope the rest of 2020 will be only positive surprises.
Thank you so much for having me on, Dario. It was a blast, like always. So thanks for that.
Yeah, and now I'm really looking forward to compiling those playlists because there's gonna be so much great music and also a lot of awesome new music for me to discover in your playlist, Rune. Thanks for listening, guys. That was the Progcast episode 64, best of 2020, halfway through. Take care, everyone. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones. Listen to great music, and see you next week.
The Progcast is a production of Stuus Media and is recorded at the Moonbase Studios in Munich. It is produced by Randy M. Salo, Janine Stengel-Lewis, Blake Lewis, Kai Metzner, and Dario Albrecht. Our theme music is by This Is Not an Elephant.